No, don't do it! No, don't do it!
Firestorm, stand down!
No, fuck off.
Imagine a power-up that makes all of your attack strings and special moves better while increasing your overall combo damage and your health is healing the entire time. Well, that's exactly what Firestorm's trait ability does. Today we're discussing one of the best comeback mechanics that NetherRealm has ever made. But before we go any further, make sure to subscribe if you're new and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos. And then if you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like after watching. Without any further ado, let's get started. So Firestorm's trait is actually quite complicated. He starts the round off with nothing, but it slowly builds over time. And then if you want to build it a bit faster, he has Heat Flux, which can be dash canceled both forward and backwards, and you can even hold it down to keep charging your trait, but be careful because you can't block while doing this. And once you have one bar of trait filled, you can activate level 1, which does a couple of things. For one, you build health over time. Now it's actually not 1%, that's a bit deceptive. Check out the health bar and notice that it's not actually 1% every tick. It's actually much lower than that. And then on top of generating health, you also get an overall damage buff. Let's check out this string, 3-3. It does 78, but normally it only does 73, so a bit of a damage buff. And that might not seem like a lot of damage at first, but keep in mind it's every single hit for the entire combo until the trait runs out. So even if the attack increase seems minor at first, the combo damage overall goes up quite a bit. And because Firestorm is already a zoner, the trait makes him that much better at it because now every single projectile does a bit more damage and kills you that much faster. And as mentioned earlier, you're also building health back the entire time, so more damage on your combos, more damage on your zoning, and also a bit more health bar for you. But then if you're patient enough to wait for level 2, everything gets even better. So for starters, your health is building even faster than before, and your damage buff has increased as well. Before we got around 78 for this string, right? Let's see what it is now. Boom, check that out, 81. Which once again might not seem like a big damage buff, but here's the same combo and look at the damage increase overall. It's nothing to sneeze at. And just like before, Firestorm's zoning has gotten better as well because now every single projectile does that much more damage and kills you that much faster. And keep in mind, this buff lasts the entire time until the trait runs out. It does not switch to level 1 just because that one fireball went out. So as you can see, Firestorm's trait is quite amazing, but level 3 is where things get ridiculous. If you have the patience to wait for all 3 bars to fill, then a bunch of stuff happens. For starters, your flame glows blue, which looks amazing and also reflects how much stronger level 3 is. As expected, your health comes back even faster and you also get a bigger damage buff, which means your combos hurt that much more, but that's just the start. You're not going to believe how many things change during the level 3 trait buff. So for starters, literally every special move gets better, and I'm not joking. Let's start off with Fusion Blast. Does about 82 damage, almost 83, and leaves the opponent standing. But now let's pop level 3 and check out the difference. For starters, the opponent is knocked down and you get a damage buff. And check out the meter burn version. Boom, puts the opponent at full screen, and look at all that damage for a single fireball. That is nuts. One projectile and all that health. What a ridiculous move. Not to mention the meter burn version does damage over time, which is actually true for several special moves as you're about to see. Next up we have Energy Shield. So this reduces the amount of damage that Firestorm takes. So for a quick example, I'm going to tell Captain Colt to jump backwards and just keep firing projectiles. So by default they do 77. Let me go ahead and pop Energy Shield and see what damage they do now. Only 65, so already a bit of a damage reduction. However, now let's pop level 3 and then do the shield and look at the damage reduction. It gets even lower, only 57 now instead. It might not seem like a lot of damage right now, but imagine an entire combo and how much less damage it does during this buff. Once again, level 3 makes every move better. Next up we have Fusion Charge. Look at the damage, 106. Let's pop level 3, more damage, and the opponent is knocked much further away, and they take damage over time by default. Look at that health bar and watch it melt away. Now Fusion Charge does not have a meter burn version, which is likely why it's so strong by default when you pop level 3 trait. And next up we have Atomic Burst. This move is already amazing by default, a great get off me tool, and then if you spin the bar it extends combos. And then when you pop level 3 it does even more damage and can still extend combos, but if you have the opponent cornered you don't even need to spend any meter. It combos by default. So once you have the opponent cornered, things get very scary, because even if you don't want to spend any meter, you're getting some decent damage. And then last but certainly not least we have Molten Trap. This might be the most complex and powerful move in Firestorm's arsenal, especially especially during level 3 trade. So for starters, this move hits low, and its startup is very similar to Firestorm's overhead, which means if you're in range of his overhead, this move becomes a 50-50. And then on top of that, it's also a 50-50 during strings. So for example, back 1-2, the string you just saw, I can do back 1 Molten Trap instead, and now it's a 50-50. The opponent expects an overhead, but they get a low instead. And if all that wasn't crazy enough already, this move can be meter burn to extend combos. In fact, it's your go-to method for extending combos. And I also want to mention, you can meter burn on reaction to the move. You can see if it hits and then choose to spin the bar. You don't have to commit and risk wasting any meter. And believe it or not, it's also great for ending combos because it re-stands the opponent. Look at that, no wake-up attacks for them. Like I said before, Molten Trap is ridiculous, but it gets even crazier at level 3 for a bunch of reasons. For starters, it does more damage by default, and then if you meter burn, you get damage over time, which means even more damage for a move that already extends combos very effectively. But you likely expected that already. A damage buff on the regular version, and the meter burn version does more damage as well. Nothing about that is surprising. But here comes the crazy part. Watch the opponent's animation when I do the default version. Look how long they are stuck to the floor, and when they break free, they stumble backwards, and they can't do anything during that entire animation. And if you don't believe me, I've switched to Captain Cold, and I'm holding up on the controller right now. Look how long it takes me to jump. Now for a different example, I'm going to mash square the entire time, and look how long it takes me before I can attack. As you can see, I'm not able to move the entire time, but Firestorm can, and that gives him access to a bunch of shenanigans. So for the first example, we have the cross-ups. I can end a combo with Molten Trap and then do something like this. And did you block that? Did you know which direction I was gonna land on? Well, maybe you honestly did. You have godlike reaction. So now let's try something extra dirty. So I'm gonna use Molten Trap to stagger the opponent, jump over them, and then do a jumping 2. And even if they block that, look where I landed, on the opposite side. So it's a double mix-up. And at one point in the game, you could actually choose which side you landed on by delaying the jumping attack or changing which jumping attack you did. But sadly, I think they removed those because they were way too tough to deal with. However, even so, this mix-up is still very tough to block at the casual level. You have a cross-up and then a landing cross-up. That's really tough to deal with. And even after blocking the jumping 2, I can still go for a 50-50. I have the Molten Trap or I have the overhead. So even if you do block that really tricky cross-up, you still have to guess one more time. So as you can see, I was not joking when I said level 3 Molten Trap is ridiculous, because even if you don't spin the bar, you still get ridiculous mix-ups. But if you thought level 3 only buffed Firestorm's special moves, then you were sorely mistaken, because every attack string on screen also gets a buff. So first up, we have Fusion Energy. By default, knocks the opponent down and does 140. Let's pop level 3. It's gonna do more damage, and look how much further the opponent is knocked away. But then we have Combustible. Here is where things get crazy. Normally it just ends in a low that knocks the opponent down, but when you pop level 3 trait, it launches the opponent to start combos without any meter required. And the damage you get off this launcher is no joke. Even if you don't want to spend meter, you're still getting a decent amount of damage. And then if you do spin the bar, the combos get even crazier. And did I mention this string is safe on blocks? So not only does it start combos, but there's pretty much no risk for doing it. And don't forget that level 3 Molten Trap re-stands the opponent, which means you can keep going for mix-ups over and over. And next up, we have Atomic Destruction. Normally it's just an overhead, which is still a 50-50 when combined with Molten Trap. However, during level 3, it also starts combos, just like Combustible. So now we have a true 50-50. If they get caught by Molten Trap, you can meter burn for a full combo, but if they expect that and block low, the overhead also launches them for a full combo. So it's a true 50-50. And the damage you get from this overhead is no joke. As you're about to see, Captain Cold is almost going to lose half his health. And then finally we have Good Chemistry, which by default knocks the opponent down, but if you pop level 3, it knocks them much further and they take more damage. It's a bit underwhelming compared to Combustible and Atomic Destruction, but even so, it is still stronger than before, and sometimes you do want the opponent full screen. Maybe you want to zone and throw more fireballs. And that's it for the strings, but there's still one very important move to talk about, and that's back 2, otherwise known as Torched. Normally, it's just a far-reaching overhead that is very fast at 14 frames. However, once you pop level 3, it launches the opponent to start or extend combos, and this move is 14 frames, which means it is unreactable, especially online. And like I mentioned earlier, this move has a very similar startup to Molten Trap, which means when you're in range of the overhead and have level 3 activated, both of your moves can lead to a full combo, whether it's the overhead or the Molten Trap. So literally anytime Firestorm is at this distance and pops level 3, it becomes a guessing game. He has an overhead or a low, which are both unreactable online. And that's a really big deal because do not forget about the Molten Trap reset we talked about earlier. You force the opponent to block jumping too, and then when you land, you can go for the Molten Trap or the overhead, and both options lead to a full combo during level 3. So when you combine that 50-50 with the cross-ups and everything else that Firestorm can do, and his Molten Trap restand, he becomes a mix-up monster during level 3 trait. If you watch high-level tournaments, it's not uncommon for a character to pop level 3 and then just win the round after a couple of mix-ups. That's how deadly Firestorm becomes during level 3. He has more mix-ups and more damage, and he's healing the entire time. So as you can see, I was not joking when I said Firestorm's trait is the best comeback mechanic that NetherRealm has ever made. If you love Firestorm or enjoyed my commentary, make sure to leave a like down below. It really does help my channel out a ton. And then keep that combo going by subscribing and ringing that bell. That way you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.